Good day, boils and ghouls, and welcome to my review of The Love Witch.
Love me. Love me.
Now, I am Celine, your ex who clearly isn't over you yet, David, and I'm here to talk to you about Anna Biller. Anna Biller is a feminist filmmaker who, to this day, has about 2 movies and 4 shorts to her name. Exploring themes of gender and the male gaze are very important to her, and a reoccurring theme of her work is looking back at 1960s exploitation.
Go for a wild, wild ride with the Watusi cats. But beware, the sweetest kittens have the sharpest claws.
But from a woman's perspective. All of this eventually culminated into her best-known work, The Love Witch, released in 2016, which Biller directed, produced, wrote, edited, and scored. Not gonna lie, the only time I've seen anyone take on so many responsibilities in one movie was The Room.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Auteur theory, or the cult of the artist, refers to this idea that the human mind is predisposed to want to think that there's just one great artist in charge of the entire project. Movies do not work in the same way that books do. Hell, books don't even work the way that we think books do. Storytelling is a collaborative experience. One artist might put forward a draft of the book, but over the course of time, editors, publishers, and reviewers have altered the work in their own way. A great example of this would be William Shakespeare, whose works have not only been heavily edited over time, they're also adaptations of stories that existed long before he did. Yeah, Romeo and Juliet?
I defy you, stars!
We don't even know who came up with that one first. Our first records of that story being written down come from 1476 Italy, over a century before Shakespeare's version would premiere in England. And yet, we like to ascribe Shakespeare with everything because we like the idea that he was an artist so talented that we can just never achieve his level. And when we talk about movies, auteur theory gets even more complicated. We like to think that Alfred Hitchcock produced Psycho all on his own with no outside help from anyone.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
But the truth is, the screenplay was written by Joseph Stefano. The music was provided by Bernard Herrmann, and Hitchcock didn't even want music to begin with. And meanwhile, the whole thing was edited by George Tomasini. Hitchcock himself has been quoted to say that Psycho wouldn't exist without Bloch's original novel. So, is Psycho Hitchcock's masterpiece? Maybe, but he isn't the only artist who can claim it as such. And then we have something like The Love Witch, which really complicates this idea of auteur theory. This is about as close as we are ever going to get to a movie that perfectly reflects the artist's original vision. Besides The Room, of course.
Oh, hi, Mark.
And I can't claim to know how auteur theory affects this one. Every single person who Biller just bounced ideas off of, or who read an early draft of the script, with that whole balance. But regardless, it is difficult to resist this movie on the simple basis that it reflects a single artist's vision, whether that pays off or not. It's just fascinating to see how much control one artist can have over one movie. And if there is actually a reason why we let other artists affect our work. So yeah, if nothing else, The Love Witch is a fascinating experiment. But is it a decent movie? Well, let's dive in and find out. So The Love Witch follows Elaine, a young woman moving into her friend's apartment after dealing with a bad breakup. And by the way, when I say bad breakup, I mean that she killed the bastard when she found out that he wanted to leave her. You see, Elaine is a witch, in the sense that she seems to have been initiated into a very widespread coven, verging on cult-like. Elaine's coven preaches the importance of sex magic, which is a real thing, just not in the way that it's presented in this movie. Real-life sex magic refers to this idea that your powers as a witch are more highly concentrated when you're in the middle of sexual activity. And so sex becomes a powerful tool to concentrate your powers as a witch. But here, sex magic refers to something very specific. It's this idea that witches can use sex magic to enslave the men that they're involved with. Each and every time Elaine has sex throughout this movie, the man becomes immediately devoted to her, to the point that they just can't handle it and usually end up dying afterwards. And Elaine is aware of this. She talks frequently about using sex to achieve love.
Men are like children. They're very easy to please, as long as we give them what they want.
But the weird thing is, she barely even seems to like the men that she's sleeping with. And that only gets worse when they become emotionally attached to her.
What a
The first man that Elaine becomes involved with is a professor who can't stop crying when he realizes that he's in love with her. Elaine then starts to refer to him as womanly and refuses to respond to him when he calls out to her, which obviously refers to her inability to deal with his emotional needs. Proving that she wants to find love, she just can't deal with the reality of it.
I thought I'd found a real man, but he's just like a little girl. No one was ever there for me when I was crying my heart out. No one ever comforted me. No one.
But at the same time, she seems to have this thinly veiled disdain from him from minute one. She just barely tolerates his existence until she can finally have sex with him and get what she wants. So this movie is about a woman who wants sex but isn't ready to commit to a relationship. Right? Well, yes and no. Elaine also talks about sex like it's a thing to be exchanged, like currency.
Giving men sex is a way of unlocking their love potential.
She trades in sex, and she will use that to achieve her ultimate goal, love, which is something she just can't seem to achieve. The gender politics in this movie are kind of frustrating. If Elaine is gonna seek sex, then I'd rather she be blatant about it. But at the same time, women just generally aren't allowed to talk about sex as freely as men are. So maybe this is supposed to reflect the idea that Elaine is talking about sex as freely as she can. Elaine herself is a really interesting character, because genuine moments are only really expressed through subtleties in Samantha Robinson's performance. For the most part, Elaine has constructed herself perfectly to be a male fantasy. She likes to cook, not because cooking is enjoyable, but because men like women who cook. When one man expresses a desire for a dangerous woman, that's suddenly what she becomes.
I'm the love witch. I'm your ultimate fantasy.
But the true Elaine is only really expressed through the grimace that she gives when her priest touches her, or similar moments. But then we get into that whole, the gender politics in this movie are frustrating thing when we get back to the character of Trish.
I'll admit I used sex to get this, but I'm not proud of it.
Trish is kind of Elaine's foil. In every single way, they are opposites. But while I would like to see Trish be an unapologetic whore who speaks her mind in a way that Elaine just can't, Trish is instead this good, faithful wife who does have sex, she just isn't proud of it.
But I'm not proud of it.
Which means that we get this whole virgin whore dichotomy that I really am not a fan of. A woman does not have to have sex to be valuable. No. But this idea of female sexuality has just become way too complicated in a society that punishes women for wanting sex. Elaine wants sex as much as she can't talk about it, but she's also this movie's anti-hero. Trish doesn't want sex. She's disgusted by the whole idea of it, and you really get the sense that her marriage is sexless. And she is the one that the movie holds up on a pillar of morality. But the thing is, as much as women can feel free to not have sex as much as they want, they should also feel free to have sex and be unapologetic about it. Even if that sex is with their monogamous husband. Even if it's tame by pornographic standards. Women should feel comfortable vocalizing the things that make them feel good. This is one place where the movie fails. As much as it is talking about these issues, it really doesn't address it in a way that I would have liked to see. But that's also just a side effect of making a movie as political as this one. Not everyone is gonna agree with the statements that you're making. And I know what you're thinking. Celine, just let the politics go already. What is the plot to this movie that you are clearly ignoring right now? Well, you see, that's the problem. There is no plot. The movie just kind of follows Elaine falling in love with 3 separate men. two of whom perish when she can't meet their emotional needs. The third one is a cop who might be a narcissist, he might be asexual, he might be hella gay. It's really hard to tell. The point is, he just can't fall in love with Elaine, which only seems to make her more interested in him. At the movie's end, Cop Guy rejects her, which drives her so over the edge that she then stabs him to death, and then thinks about her failed relationships while bathed in his blood. We see that as much as Elaine has been searching for love this whole movie, the inability for both genders to properly express what they want has gotten in the way of that. So she's never really known true love. It's clearly meant as this tragic moment where you're supposed to feel sorry for Elaine and all that she's gone through in her search for true love. But it's also really disturbing, making you wonder what the definition of love even is. All in all, this movie is weirdly forgettable. I can see the artistic merit in this movie for sure. The scene where she's burying her lover and monologuing in her head about how squeamish men can get about periods really stands out in my mind as an example of how weird this movie can get.
Women bleed, and that's a beautiful thing.
We see here that she has no sympathy for the men that she has killed. She doesn't fear getting caught or going to jail even.
So I was a bad girl. Are you going to punish me?
She's just caught up in her own head, monologuing about the beauty of womanhood. And it's just this weird scene where you become aware that she isn't even capable of the type of love that she wants. My biggest problem with this movie is that it's nearly 2 hours long and nothing happens. There just isn't much here when it comes to plot or progression. Elaine starts the movie as a femme fatale and she ends the movie as a femme fatale. And at no point does the movie even tease you with the idea that she might achieve what she's looking for. It is a very pretty movie, I'll give it that. Every set and costume is just gorgeous to look at. Biller really did do an amazing job of recreating that feel of 1960s exploitation, but from a modern lens. And if the storytelling just matched, I think we'd have an amazing movie here. I want to love this movie because it does reflect a very romantic image on my religion. And I do enjoy the gender politics that this movie is trying to discuss, like the fact that women can't talk about sex and men can't talk about emotions. But when your movie is, oops, all gender politics, you are really banking on your audience agreeing with everything you say, which I agree with some of it. And if anyone wants to take a picture of me lounging on a floor pentagon just like this, give me your information and I'm there. Thank you so much for watching, my pets, and I will see you next time. Love you. Boys and girls, just one last thing before I go. I'm just gonna give my shout out to my underappreciated artist for the week. Today I'm gonna be giving a shout out to The Vampy Show. You can check out a few of their episodes here on YouTube. She does a very good job with horror comedy in a very Elvira-esque kind of way. You can really tell that she puts a lot of time and effort into her jokes, her styling. Everything about her videos are just gorgeous and hilarious. So you guys should definitely head over to her channel. The link will be down in the description below.